Hello, I'm Chris Meek, and you've tuned to this week's episode of Next Steps Forward. As always, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Our focus is on personal empowerment, a commitment to well-being, and the motivation to achieve more than ever thought possible. And we have another amazing guest this week. Peggy Willms has been a certified fitness trainer, sports performance nutritionist, and personal and executive health, wellness, and life coach for over 35 years. She's also an entrepreneur, multi-best-selling author, featured contributor for the international online magazine Biz Catalyst 360, host of wellness retreats, and host of the Coach Peggy Show. She spent over 20 years in corporate wellness and has managed multi-million-dollar medical clinics. Her unique business and worksite wellness programs have earned her multiple awards. She has 2 sons and 2 grandsons. She loves all things beach and sunshine and lives in Florida with her better half. Peggy Willms, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
I'm exhausted.
You read my notes. You should be exhausted. We were talking before the show starts, 6 books in 2 years.
I know. I deserve a nap.
Just wait for another hour if that's okay.
Okay, I will. Yeah, I deserve a
52 minutes. That's all I'm asking. All right. Okay. So I'm exhausted. I think I'm worn out just describing everything that you do. You keep a very busy schedule and you have so much energy. In the interest of our audience's personal empowerment and well-being, what regimen does a fitness trainer and sports performance nutritionist follow to stay in top shape? And take us through every day of the week.
Every day of the week. Okay. Well, first and foremost, it takes a lot of years to figure out what works, in all seriousness. And for me, I have a history of migraines. So for me, the thing was kind of working backwards is quality sleep. And then to make sure my nutrition's on point and to have, I've got my routine. I'm left-brained for sure. So I've got my routine, but I do allow that flexibility. I teach The Power of When by Dr. Michael Bruce. And The Power of When is based off your chronotype and your biorhythms. So I know what time of day to do my best things. So 2 + 2 is not good at 2 p.m. So I wax and wane with the times for my exercise. I start on my, I have one of those wave boards for vibrational therapy. To get rid of lymph node stuff. So I start my day every day with that. And I've been writing a ton. I try to get out in the sun, vitamin D, get on my bike, get my kayak, stay in touch with family and friends. But I allow some flexibility each day.
In terms of writing, your head's down, you're on the keyboard, or you've got a pen and paper. How much time do you spend writing? How much time do you get up? Do you wear like my Apple Watch tells me to stand up? You've been sitting for too long. How do you keep that going?
I absolutely do not preach what I teach. Just be clear. Absolutely not. I go through phases of loving mania, right? So I'm addicted to my dopamine cup. So when my reward system is being rewarded, I will forget to eat. Honestly, I'll forget to move. I'll forget to do all the things that we all need to do. When it comes to writing, I will do the creativity might come at 8:00 at night. It might come at 5:00 in the morning. And I'm one of those that you use different methods. I may use my handwriting. I may actually draw. I may use my phone. I got a whiteboard over here. So my books, Chris, the last 4 out of 6 have been very heavy content where it's contributing authors, where those very emotional, sometimes I cry, sometimes I laugh. So I've had to have a conversation with myself to make sure I kind of pace when I write and when I edit, because I edit them as well. So it's
a lot.
It's a lot.
And we're going to get into those books later on the show. There's, you've got a new one coming out, so I'm excited to talk about that. I mentioned in the intro that you live in Florida and love all things beach and sunshine.
Yes.
Have you always lived in Florida, and how important are sunshine and the beach to your overall well-being?
It's funny because I have pictures in my family photo album since I was 6 months old of me sitting by the beach in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. So I grew up in New Hampshire. And then I ended up at Fort Ord, California, working in the military. My spouse was in the military. And then I ended up in Germany for 4 years, which in 89, when the wall came down, is where I got my first certification in Frankfurt, Germany. Then I raised my family for 30 years in Colorado. And Peggy isn't a person that likes that landlocked feel. I literally causes me anxiety when I fly into Mile High. I'm like, So I just am a water girl. I've got to get my feet in the sand and kind of ground myself, kind of spiritually, kind of just get myself into nature. So I've been here since 2016.
So I didn't realize you're from New England, and I'm almost afraid to ask this because I'm not sure if I want the answer. My listeners and viewers know I'm a huge sports fan. In particular, I love my beloved New York Yankees.
Okay.
You're from New England.
Yeah.
What's your baseball team?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We even had inappropriate t-shirts my 88-year-old grandmother wore that said something about the Yankees that wasn't positive. Go Red Sox. Sorry.
And I'm sorry, listeners, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us, Peggy.
Oh my
You're
God.
still a nice person, Peggy. I'm glad you're here.
Drink out of my unicorn mug because of that. That's funny.
Exactly. Well, so you're from New England. You're landlocked. I live in Connecticut. We've got quasi beach because we've got Long Island Sound as the big hurricane stopper for us.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for people that don't have the advantages of year-round sunshine on the beach?
I love that. So seasonal affect disorder is something I've dealt with my whole entire life. So it was nice to be able to have the sunshine, get filled up and do well. But what are we going to do when there is no sun and you've got 4 or 5 months of that? I think a lot of that is why I wanted out of New England, to be honest. Those seasons are really long. But I think that you can build that up in different ways. So some people, honestly, they love the mountains, and I don't get that, or they love the river. I think you have to find what you love that is nature built or that is physical fitness. And if it doesn't work, get a sad lamp. I had a seasonal affect, a disorder lamp for a really long time. And I think nutrition pulls in a big part of energy. That balance between physical and nutrition pulls that in for your mindset.
I meant to ask you a moment ago about being from New England. Do you have neck pain?
Well, I had 2 car accidents, Chris, that weren't my fault. So yes, I do.
Well, I find I might have neck pain just from looking up the Yankees all the time.
Oh my God, stop it. I don't, now I know that was borderline a dad joke. I don't get dad jokes. So just so you know, if you expect me to laugh, please laugh first so I know when to laugh, because I am bad at dad jokes.
All right. Well, we'll prep you next time. I'll put something in the chat.
Good,
all right. So let's get back to business here.
Yeah, certainly.
I mentioned that you're a multi-best-selling author, and you have a new book that was just released last month in June, and you have another book that'll be coming out soon. Before I talk about them, I think we should start with the foundational book that you and Dr. Marcus Wettstein released in August of 2022. The title is The Fourfold Formula for All Things Wellness, True Stories of the Heart, Spirit, Mind, and Body is the book in which you introduced your wellness wheel. As you described it, the wellness wheel has 24 spokes, which is why staying healthy, wealthy, happy, and wise isn't easy. Share with us the concept of the wellness wheel and its components.
Absolutely. First of all, it took a long time to develop. So I've been working with clients, obviously, and patients for decades. And as I moved out here and started to coach virtually, which was before even COVID, but I knew I wanted to live out here, be able to work from wherever and be diverse. And I started to really realize that, being healthy is not about just eating kale and doing squats. That's what I've always said. So once I really started to realize how much the mindset was a part of that, and the stress, coping skills, mission, vision, values of life, purpose, I realized that as I started breaking it out, I needed to, because the clients, it was so overwhelming to even say nutrition. There's a difference between diet and nutrition. The diet's the plan. The nutrition is the content. So and then lifestyle. Well, lifestyle is when you go to the bar on Friday night and have chicken and wings. How's your lifestyle? So after I broke it out into 24 pieces, I went back to Marcus, who I've known since 2009. I met him. I was managing his office, his endocrinology clinics. So he moved from Connecticut to Colorado. He's German. He moved from Connecticut. He had his private practice. And for years, we talked about writing a compilation book about patients and client success stories. So that's how the Fourfold Formula started. We knew we wanted to write a trilogy, but we decided to expand it beyond clients and just, patients. So it then went out into who's got a story, and we plugged it into the trilogy.
So you went into it thinking you were going to write 3 books.
We actually didn't. I developed the wheel in 2018. It took 5 years to get copyrighted and registered. So once I developed the wheel, then we realized we were going to base the books off the wheel. And that's how the 4 chapters of Heart, Spirit, Mind, and Body even came about, was based on the wellness wheel.
Got it.
Yeah.
In the Fourfold Formula for All Things Wellness, 40 authors share their personal and true stories to empower and motivate your readers and leave them filled with hope. How'd you choose those authors and those particular stories, and why were they special to you?
Yeah, we opened it up, and it got to that we were so concerned, Chris, that we would even get enough, because I wanted to do 30, right? I figured that I could handle that. You don't want a book that's much more than 80,000 words. You got to pick it up. It's very chicken soup of the soul type book. You can pick it. You can read it on a vacation, the doctor's office. So we wanted about 2,000 words per author. And we thought, are we really going to get 30? Are we going to have to publicize this? And it was word of mouth. This one knew Sally. Sally knew John. John knew somebody he worked with. It was like that. All of the books were filled. I didn't even do any screening. There was maybe 2 or 3 stories that were kind of inappropriate. And that was it. And we took the 35 or 40 we've had for each book. Some of them were repeats. So I do have some authors who wrote in all 3, which was really cool. But we did no big advertising for any of the books.
And what do you consider inappropriate stories? I'm just interested.
Some of those that might put somebody at risk for something that was outside of the realm of what I want. You know what I'm saying? So mental health, that's to that extent, that would be counseling, something that I didn't want to risk my licenses for. So yeah, as you know, that.
Yep.
So, and something too raw, sometimes really, really raw, like family events and stuff that need to be worked out.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
In June of 2023, you and Dr. Vetstein released Win the Wellness War. We are responsible for all things wellness. You built on that theme that happiness and good health don't just happen, but that it, quote, takes awareness, education, strategy, consistency, emotional resiliency, and more. In fact, you note that it sounds like planning for a battle or a war. Take us from the first book to the next level in wellness war of planning for a battle or a war.
Yes. So the first book, The Fourfold Formula, is based off of cooking. Like I'm a metaphor queen. I love to get, because I think people can tangibly understand metaphors. So we took that through like the recipe of cooking a cupcake, how you need all the ingredients in life in order to have that outcome, that product. So when we went into the Win the Wellness War, it was really about prepping for a war. Have you done the PT? Is your battle dress ready? You know, what are you going to do for a support system? Where is the goal? How are you going to get there? So we took that through using metaphorically, what are you going to do to get ready for battle and win the war of health and wellness? So that's how we took that into the second book. So it was the same theme. We set it up by chapters. It was there was a continuity through that and into the third book.
Well, I love as we get to the third book, how the consistency in the titles of your books in terms of having the acronym and, as you said, the metaphor. And so I love that. And I'm a big fan of not just the value of resiliency, but the absolute need for it. So would you give some extra attention to the value of and need for emotional resiliency?
Yes, and I wish we'd start teaching it in kindergarten, to be honest. I think it's really, really important. We teach love languages, we teach learning styles, and we talk about emotional resiliency would change relationships, would change work environments. I teach the roller coaster of life, the RCL, and to expect that when the roller coaster goes up and you're enjoying it and you're having a good time, it will come down and there will be loop-de-loos. There will be events of divorce, which can be an amazing opposite of getting married and getting a puppy and the death of a puppy. So the more resilient we are and we understand those coping skills that work for us or don't, because they're different for everybody. If exercise works for me, taking a nap for you might work. So to me, that resiliency is all about figuring out that recipe to get you through those events that are absolutely going to happen. You know, unfortunately, they're going to happen to most of us.
For those of us who had kids who went through COVID and 2.5 years of homeschooling, you know, the need for emotional resiliency, you talk about, you just mentioned how it should be taught in schools. You know, I've talked for a long time about, you know, we're now seeing that tsunami effect in the mental health space globally. And I think that generation of kids will be hit the hardest. My wife and I have 3. We had one who was she actually graduated from high school during COVID. One, her first year of high school was all home. And then our youngest was 7 turning 8. And she took a picture, I remember in April of COVID 2020, and we're in our dining room and he's on my iPad with AirBuds on and I'm on my laptop with AirBuds on. Like that was the new normal. Everyone knows that kids are resilient, but what are your thoughts? And I know it's just your personal thoughts on what the aftershock, if you will, could be for this generation of kids, call it now in sort of 6th grade to early mid-college.
Well, at first, I had a client. The best example I can give is I was coaching a family, and I had an 18-year-old boy and I had a 21-year-old boy, same family. And I was never prepared for what I would be talking with them about social environment in the sense of even dating. So Matthew, it's an open subject. He's talked about this before, he's 21 years old and he can't throw a football. He can't get rid of the testosterone. He can't fight and wrestle anybody. He's stuck at home, virtually sitting there, and he can't date. He's trying to figure out how to do an app. He's introverted. So those coping skills, I think by working with an expert, you're able to figure out other ways to do things. I mean, I was helping him with his bio on social media to help him to be able to have relationships. As far as coming out of COVID, I think that we need to spend some quick down and dirty time on trying to figure out how to almost acclimate back into society and how to not expect that external gratification, that immediate turn on Zoom. It's there. Everybody's there. What are we going to do? Where's the support system? So, I don't know if that helps kind of on where you were headed, but
Yep. No,
yeah.
No, I agree with you. And it's just, you've got to do the quick down and dirty, like you said, let these kids know, like, it's okay to feel this or to think this, because that wasn't normal. It's a 100-year thing. God willing, it's no more than 100 years, or at least 100 years. And so it's just, now it's just a chapter in life, ironically enough. We're 4 years out on the other side, but as long 4
And I
years.
think the other part of that, Chris, that was so unfortunate is the fact that, yes, we got thrown into virtual world, and grandparents, we were all FaceTiming. It was amazing. But then over here, you have this, this whole flat lateral of, now there's this fear of my health and my grandparents passing away. And just so simultaneously, you're not only needing to deal with how to learn from home and new platforms, but then this heaviness of that emotional resiliency. How are we going to cope with that death and health in your face? That we still haven't really talked about that.
No, it's kind of like, okay, it's over. Let's just move on and, sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to your latest book, the one released just last month in June, titled Wellness GPS, Get Prepared for Success with All Things Wellness. As I mentioned, it's the latest book that you've co-authored with Dr. Marcus Wettstein. Please give us some insight in that book.
That we took it again the same exact way. We went metaphorically into GPS, so getting prepared for success. And I had that imagery of, we're going to get in our car, and I think I'm going to come to Chris's house. And then all of a sudden there's a detour, there's a car accident there. I can't go as fast. I got sick. I got to slow down. Did I pack my snacks? And so when we look at a goal in life and we think we're headed a certain direction, how are we going to become emotionally resilient enough and have the tools to be able to shape shift and pivot and still get there, or be willing that if the goal looks differently, to still accept that that's okay, that we were headed that way. So we still took the same concept, 30 to 40 authors, used my wellness wheel, and then metaphorically, that was a GPS, getting prepared for success.
Now onto your upcoming book, which we've mentioned earlier in the show.
Years.
Again, another book. This book is titled Unsheltered. How did you choose the title? And based on the title, I guess it's going to be a little bit different than your previous books. Am I right or wrong on that?
Oh, you are absolutely right. So 15 months ago, 15 months ago, I was with my co-author, who's Dennis Potoco, and we were doing an event in Tampa. And it was the first time I'd really been exposed to the unhoused, the unsheltered in that city environment, because I live in a little tiny fishing town. Excuse me. And I was so overwhelmed. And he's worked so many years with the unsheltered and, nonprofits. And I had this feeling that if I'm going to write with another co-author, I want to do it with Dennis Potoco. I've known him. I've blogged for him. And I literally say in my preface in the book that if it wasn't him to be the Batman to my Robin, I wasn't going to do it, because I knew the subject was going to be heavy. So the reason we chose the reason that we chose unsheltered versus homeless is it's a little bit more, it's an easier word to embrace, because not everybody is unsheltered. Is homeless. They could be unsheltered. They could be on a couch. They could be in a car. And this is a compilation book of 40 authors who have been homeless, are homeless, unsheltered, or know somebody they're 1 degree removed, or a nonprofit that has gone through their experience in relation to this topic. We wanted to change the narrative of what people think unsheltered really is. It's not the 55-year-old man with dirty fingernails who is an addict. It's a lot more than that.
And when will Unsheltered be published? And then while we're at it, how can we find it and your other books?
Yes, Unsheltered will be published in 2 weeks on July 30th. It's going to be launched. And all of my books, my children's book, my workbooks, all of those are available on Amazon. Just make sure my last name is Willms, not Williams, and you will find them.
And what's your website?
My website is allthingswellness.com.
So let's stick with Unsheltered for a few more minutes before the break.
Yes.
That was a huge pivot for you. And as you mentioned, that when you're in Tampa, it seemed to be the first time that you were exposed to, we'll use the word, the unsheltered, the people out there. Okay. How did it make you, what made you want to focus on that, given sort of your life coaching past and history versus something that's a very serious topic, something that's a crisis here in our country, and certainly based on some of these stories, had to be very emotional for you?
Well, one thing that I learned with the first 3 compilation books is I was good at compilation books. I was very good at spearheading and gathering stories and editing them and being able to work with the authors, because I've worked with 400 authors in 2 years. And so when you look at 400 people and the dynamics of meeting them, I knew I could keep myself grounded. I had to work on it, but I had to keep myself lots of energy, lots of strength, lots of compassion, hugging, holding, respecting. And I knew that for some reason I was meant to vessel that project. I was meant to just house that on my back and be able to vessel all those stories that, frankly, I think we had to go to the streets. We literally had to go to the streets to get these stories. I was extremely disappointed that the nonprofits didn't step up like Peggy thought they would. Very disappointed. So we actually had 1 out of 67 step up and write a story for the book.
And why do you think that is? I would think that they'd want to get
took me
their
a
word out
long
there,
way.
their name.
Trust me, we were willing to put their name in the book, their mission in the book. We were willing to put their contact information, what they were all about, the leaders of it. And I thought that's where we would go for our stories. I thought it would be the safest environment. I was going to go sit there, or they were going to sit there and talk to Jim, who came in for his breakfast, and we were going to do this just beautifully. And that didn't happen. They didn't give us the environment. And I think, and in my book, I talk about it. Unfortunately, I feel they don't want us in their back office. I'll leave it at that. I don't think
want to
they
see the
want
books.
attention brought to it. Yep. They want us out of their books.
So now that you've pivoted away from your life coaching books,
Yes.
you've got this one coming out. What's next? I know you said you want to take a break. Your brain hurts. You probably have writer's cramp, writer's block. Anything on the horizon?
I've got a pretty big TikTok following. And so I go live on TikTok every day where I work with coaching tips and I just build this audience to help them reach their goals. And it's been amazing. And I'm going to focus on that in the marketing of what I've already done. I'm not good at patting myself on the back and looking at how far I've come. I just level up and kind of just keep paving the way. So I haven't done a good job, to be honest. I need to find somebody that'll help me market and do what they're good at. I've learned that. Peggy doesn't have to be good at everything. She needs to hire the experts to do it. And I'm going to continue writing the children's books with my son, because we have a series of 5 and we've only done 1. So I'm going to kind of play with that over the next 6 months.
Well, that's a perfect segue. I was just going to go into that book, which I was unaware of until you shared with me the other day. So please tell us the title, what it's about, and how long it actually took you to write and publish it.
Well, and I'm holding in my hand, and I'm just showing you, Chris, so that you know. So this book, actually, The Boy with the Broken Nose, I wrote and illustrated in 2001, literally. And unfortunately, time got in the way, and it just got published. It was a bestseller in December. But what we decided to do is the books were originally based off my 7-year-old son, who had a really hard time telling the truth. And I wanted to figure out why. Was I not creating a safe environment? Was he unable to be? Why was he not able to be accountable? So once Tanner now is 30 and a dad of his own 2 sons, we have spun it, and looking back at it as 2 adults, the mom and the 30-year-old, who's now a dad. Why didn't he tell me the truth why he fell out of the tree? Why did he bring in the pocket pals in his jeans that then died in the dryer? Because he could have told me he wanted roly-polies in the house. So we've got a lot of parent prompts in there in hopes it will spark conversation between whoever's reading, the grandparent or the parent, to the child who's listening.
Peggy, as I just mentioned, you have your own podcast, the
Yes.
Coach Peggy Show, also known, I think, as Coach, Couch, and Coffee. Before we talk about the show, let's talk about the Coach Peggy part. How'd you become Coach Peggy? What was your motivation? How did the journey unfold? And what keeps you going day in and day out?
Yes. So it originally started, as I said, in 1989 when I was overseas in Germany. And as a dependent wife, and I was a civilian working for the military, it was kind of that extra thing. What do I want to do and I've always been in health and fitness. So that was when I got my first personal training certification. So over 30 years, obviously I can look back and look at the evolution and see what connected that whole fabric. I can see that now, but it just rolled into exercise, is now nutrition, is then, it was before coach was called a coach or a transformation coach or a mindset expert or anything. It was way before then. I was there so much so that it was high impact aerobics to low impact aerobics to backups. It's like, seriously. So the Coach Peggy thing really came up when I was at the University of Colorado, and I was working with the boot camps for the Extreme Weight Loss Show on ABC. And we ended up using the terms coach, transformation coaches, exercise coaches. So that coach thing just came with me through this whole time. And it's really, really about the transformation, the mindset, and then into the fitness, sleep, stress, nutrition. Yeah.
So I want to take a little tangent here. You
Yeah.
mentioned the first part of the show about 1 year in Germany. You were there when the wall fell.
Yeah.
Now, our generation was the last generation to go through that Cold War fear, if you will, of the U.S. versus Russia. And I was in college when the wall fell, so I remember seeing all of that coverage. Tell us what that was like to actually be there. I mean, that was a huge, monumental, historical event that people never thought would happen.
And I hashtag may have or not have pieces of the wall. Okay. So when I was over there, it was really interesting because pre-wall coming down, the U.S. government our military forces were really praised. Like we were like, oh my gosh, you're here to help us. Lots of support system. And I worked for the 130th Station Hospital. So there was lots of prep in that world, in the medical world. When the wall came down, I've written a story in one of my previous books. I remember being in the gas station and a family came from East Germany over, and I met them at the gas station at the PX, and she was standing there, and the car was literally, there were clothes coming out of the windows. I mean, it was so packed. And I remember talking to her, and she could barely speak English. But the fact is they shoved as much as they could in the car and raced as fast as they could to the west. And it was palpable. Everything was palpable, and the dishevelment and just the run, because we don't know if we can run anymore. So that was probably, short of the natural disasters I've been through, that was the most catastrophic hands-on space I've seen. So yeah.
Just an amazing thing to see. I can't imagine what it was like. All right, now we'll get back on script. We just talked about the Coach Peggy, the Coach Peggy part.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Coach Peggy Show. What's the
And
format? How long have you been doing it? And how can we tune in?
The Coach Couch and Coffee was actually my initial show. And so I was doing that. That was my initial beginning show. And then in 2018, I went through a rebranding, and I worked with a rebranding coach weekly for a year, cried every week, could not believe the tear down to build up, speaking of the wall. And I had to learn who I really was. I had to learn about my personal resume versus my professional. You and I both know we can speak personal or professional resume all day long. 1989, this is what I did. But she really broke down and said, no, who are you? Tell the stories. Who are you? And I really learned in 2018 to tell the stories. And that's when she said, you are your brand. These are the colors. Let's change it from beachy, Coach Couchy, that time of thing. And she just said, no, go with who you are. You've worked your butt off to get to the place that you are. Own it. Sit up tall. Don't change your haircut. She literally told me, don't change that mohawk for at least 2 years. Okay. So that shifted. The platform is, honestly, it's very relaxed atmosphere. We have all of the shows are on my website, allthingswellness.com. I'm out on YouTube, social media. I've had many authors. I've had you on the show. So the format is very much, I kind of look at my wheel, to be honest, Chris, is that what lane am I missing? Oh, let's go down here with, nutrition and have somebody on, or an author over here. So it's similar, but different than yours.
You get to talk about things that you're interested in, right?
Yeah, I have.
You think are interesting.
Yeah, I have a video I just put out on peeling back the onion and trying to figure out your purpose and passion, and how you have to really just keep peeling and peeling to get to that center that makes you cry. Because to me, when your eyes open up, you see the whites of the eyes, someone leans forward and they actually start to get teary-eyed if I took something away. Then I'm like, hold pattern right there, because that's you. So if I don't do my show or my lives or my writing with that level of passion, I have to step back and go, who are you trying to be when you grow up? Be yourself. And so that authenticity and transparency that's literally one of my values, is to stand and lean into that.
So I'd be remiss if I let you get away without taking advantage of your expertise, both as a trainer and as a nutritionist, because nutrition and exercise, as we know, are both important to our well-being and resiliency, and also to empowering us. I'd like to start with what wellness means to you. How do you define wellness for the average person?
Well, because I've worked with everybody from Iraqi soldiers to undereater, anorexics, body dysmorphia in high school, all the way to elders, I really have a whole library, a plethora of examples where wellness is really mindset. And, you can eat well and then not eat well, and you can exercise and then get injuries and not be able to exercise. So how do you balance the what can you do? With my Iraqi soldier, okay, he was dismembered on the bottom. And I would meet him out in the parking lot, and he always said to me, what can I do, Peggy, today versus what can't I do? John never showed up and said, what can't he do? You and I do, because we don't want to. We don't. So wellness to me is everything from being as stress-free as possible to good, really healthy relationships to not procrastinating to, so it's just this whole encompassing of, I think the majority of us can get up in the morning and say to them what wealth feels like.
Well, I love that concept that the soldier said. I had a guest on maybe a year ago, and she said, we all think about what's the worst that can happen to me today. And she spins it around and she gets up every day and she says, what's the best that can happen? I actually wrote that down. I have a Post-it note on my monitor right here because I'm like, that's such a great mindset to start your day and end your day with. What's the best that can happen today? It's up to you.
It's so true. I remember when I started going out in the parking lot to help him in and hold the door, and he said, why are you doing that? And you work with this population, so you get it. And I'm like, well, I'm just greeting you out here. He said, do you do it to anybody else? And I said, no, John, I don't. He goes, then I'll see you in the gym.
Yep. It's exactly the mindset.
Right. That's where it's at, right?
Are there any misconceptions about wellness that you'd like to address?
I think that the point is that it's not all going to be well. It's not going to all be perfect. We chase and chase. We try to level up. We run up that mountain. One of the examples I can give is the heaviest client I ever had was in his mid 500s. And so as we were doing it, we took these troops, we took 20 of them up to the mountain. And the mountain in Colorado that we were looking at was, to him, Everest. Like, I'm not going up there, Peggy. And I said, oh, yes, we are. We're going to go very slowly. It could take us 5 or 6 hours. We've got the water, we've got the snacks. We can sit, take breaks, sit, crawl, walk, run, whatever. And so as we got going and he'd look back, and he'd fall down and he'd scrape his knee. And I said, do you want to go back to the bottom and start over? And he's like, well, no. I said, then stand up. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And it took hours and hours and hours. So I think the expectation that full wellness is 24, 365 is the misconception in and of itself. I might be well for this hour I'm with you, Chris, but I could be exhausted after, not want to eat well, and go take a nap and not feel well. But I've learned, just like we talked about resiliency and education and hanging out with experts, I know what to try next.
And it's okay to fail, right?
Big time. I say something to my kids, and not everybody likes it, but I always say, hurry up to fail. Because to me, meaning the quicker that you get to that the obstacle, then we can figure out how to get through it. And what does fail mean to me, to you, it can be something catastrophic like, losing a job. But for me, I'm like, next, what's going on? But we've got to honor that that's not always easy for everybody, every event.
What advice would you have for someone who's just beginning their wellness journey?
The very first thing I would say is find an accountability team, which sounds backwards. Usually it's like set the goal, call the coach, call the nutritionist, but you need to have at least 2 people. I always say, I have an eating disorder. I've been doing well for 35, 40 years, but I'm an undereater and I get busy and I don't get hungry. And still to this day, I have my troops around me that say, you haven't taken a break. You look like you're getting a migraine. Are you? And I have to have those people. Now, I am not always happy when they call me out. I'm not. But I think the very biggest thing you could do to get started is someone who's going to push you, somebody who's going to hug you, and somebody who's going to get mad. That you've got to have like that whole troop. So I would say accountability to hold your, to keep you on your feet.
There's so much information out there these days, and a lot of it's often contradictory about nutrition, exercise, and wellness. You've been in the profession for many years and know so much about those topics, but you're also so busy. How do you stay up to date with the latest research and developments in wellness?
Chris, we're not 20, so I'm just going to say I'm not 20. But I have seen over the years, since the 1950s, honestly, the best example I can give is worksite wellness. But people think that's kind of brand new. It's hundreds of years. It's hundreds of years they've been trying to do worksite wellness. But I go back to the basics. And that's why I love like the Mediterranean diet. If we talk about nutrition for a hot second, I love walking and eating the Mediterranean diet in the sense of making sure that everybody's nutrition needs are met. But you want to have some sort of nutrition plan that's colorful, that has a little bit of everything. And I've been through the keto with my clients and the intermittent fasting and the zone diet. And I've seen them come and go where eggs cause cancer and now they're lovely. So I think it's the get back to basics, figure out if you've got enough macro and micronutrients, in your for your goals. Your goals are different than mine. But yeah, I literally try to figure out what works for the client. Because sometimes if people don't like dairy, they're not going to eat Greek yogurt. They're not. And so if I find another way to spin that around so they get their, you know, their nutrients, then we're going to have to spin it with what works for them. They're not going to buy Greek yogurt for 2 weeks if they're not going to eat it. So getting back to basics, Chris.
Well, I guess as a follow-up to that, you're talking about all the different diets in and out of, in trendy and not trending, get back to your high impact aerobics, low impact aerobics, and then back again. How can we tell what new information is valuable and what is just the latest fad or trend?
I know. Well, do we really want to get into what the government's hand is? I don't think so. So,
It's our next hour.
That's our next hour. Do we really want us to get sick so that we can get healthy or to not get healthy? I will be honest. I don't spend a lot of time in white papers. I don't spend a lot of time in looking at controlled environments. I did do a diabetes center of excellence study in 2012 and 13, and that was based off doing the glucose travels, like what's your insulin pre, during, and post, to be able to get them prepared in that sense. But as far as what's working and not working, I just go off of my history and figuring out what works best for the client. Blood work plays a role to have a relationship with the physician, how willing the client is to have their chiropractor involved, their physical, trainers. I've talked to their trainers before. I've talked to their physicians before. So I think again, like I talked about support system and accountability, it takes a team. It's a village. This is literally a village for each person to be. It's like raising children. You mentioned that with your kids during COVID. Each child is completely different. One child is not even going to learn the same way. One's not audio and the other, could be visual. So that's why it took so much work, because I believed in working in depths instead of laterally. I'm not a subcutaneous coach. I'm a visceral. I go deep. I want to find out what works, and I want to change generations, not 3 or 4 lives, and move on.
And maybe as a follow-up to that, are there any new trends in wellness that you find particularly promising, beneficial, or helpful?
Oh, I am not the person to ask for the vibration board. I've got my vibration board, which has been around, I think, since the 60s too. I don't eat meat. Here's an example. I don't eat meat. I haven't since 2017. Why? I have a history of bodybuilding, Miss Fitness. I used to eat chicken all day long. Why, Peggy? Why are you doing that? If you'd have told me in 2017 my inflammation markers would be so drastically high from my accidents and my allergies, and that you're going to eventually pull off those foods that cause inflammation for you, Peggy, I would have never told you that I would change my nutrition, ever. So I think that using science in the sense of blood work and physical tests and those things to decide what works. Again, I'm an all individual person. I mean, some of those studies, Chris, have 17 people in them. 17 for control.
Pretty small sample pool.
Yeah. So
you mentioned science. Are you a believer in technology? Any devices or apps to help with nutrition, exercise, sleep, and wellness?
I am. I'm an app girl. I mean, I live off my iWatch. I think it's really important for those that are competitive. I think that, when you look at, I have a son, my son I'm writing my book with is going to have his leg amputated soon, and from an accident, and then probably eventually the second one. Long story short, when you look at, and you're in this field, I know as well, when you're looking at prosthetics and the technology there that can get you back out, get you active, get you want to eat, work on your mental health, your depression, obviously all of those. But any of the apps that I came from the day of step counters that you wore on your hip, we had 2,000 steps here going up the stairs instead of, and they've evolved, and I think we need to evolve. But I think, again, it's just like nutrition and exercise. Certain apps work for people. The phone that says get up every 55 minutes works for some. I use a timer, as funny as it is, a timer on my desk to remind me when to eat. So that's back to a tool that worked for me in the early 2000s. And I think, again, it's how it evolves. We have to shape and shit. I don't know. Apple's on their 14th version of their phone. So, and I still use it. So I think it's, figuring out what works for each individual person.
Yeah, I think about times
every subject you've asked me, because it is so individualized. I'm such a proponent of individuals and not all for nothing, all for everyone. And that's why I loved these books, is these compilation books taught me that you can take one subject, homelessness, and I have 40 stories where homelessness doesn't mean the exact same thing. Now, some of the solutions absolutely can help each person, but the stories aren't exactly the same.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned the government. I'm going to pause there for a second. We were all raised on the 4 basic food groups, which I think were first released by the government in 1956, and it was the government's food pyramid. Is that what we should be following for not just a balanced diet, but the best diet for optimal health and performance?
I still believe so. I still believe so. Again, I think our biggest thing, if you look at what's the problem versus what should we fall back on, the problem is fast food. The problem is gas station food. The problem, I worked with the oil field, and if you go to North Dakota, there's nothing but gas stations. They will eat hot dogs out of gas stations for 6 weeks at a time. One of the most unhealthy industries I've ever worked with, other than truckers, right? The cross-country truckers. So if you look at how we could backwards this stuff versus trying to find the end-all be-all, then backwards into it. How can we reduce, fast food so it's not 3 times a day? Why can we take the chemicals out of it that actually make us crave it? Could we turn, how many people are eating salads out of McDonald's anymore? Well, they're full of, garbage, as you have called it, the garbage plate. I would love us to start here and go back a little bit, which not many people want to do. Not many people want to look in the past. They want to keep going and develop new things and spark people in different directions and get the biggest bang for the buck. But I wouldn't answer that probably the same way as I would when I was 28. But as 58, I have a different view. I have grandchildren now. Things look differently. I mean, they take them to fast food for what? Cheap, quick, get it done. The kids want it and it's over. There's no cooking in the kitchen. There's no lasagna being made. There's no boiling chicken. And there's excuses. Well, we work too much. Well, you know what? I did too. I worked 17 hours a day back then too. I get it. So I get fired up. Where's my microphone, Chris? I get fired up. That's a touchy subject with me because it's just like you and I are having conversations on going back to what worked. Well, let's go back to what worked. But how do we get here? We still have to fix the in-between.
Well, let's get there.
Okay.
You're a sports performance nutritionist. When it comes to the highest performing athletes, what percentage of their results can be connected to their nutrition, and how disciplined do they have to be to stay at that peak level?
Oh, you're going to take me down a deep subject again. I'll go to 80-20. I always say get a B plus on anything. If you ate 8 out of 10 times, healthy. If you moved 80% of the time. High performance athletes are a little bit different. What do? They get an A plus. That's what they do, Chris. We're going to go to the gym 7 days a week. I'm going to run a marathon, 26 miles. I'm going to focus on that. So why I developed my wheel is so that when you call me in 6 months and your marriage fell apart, you lost your house because you didn't open your mail, and all these things went awry because you were focused high performance. There are sacrifices. They make sacrifices and can focus. They have their own personal trainers, their own massage therapists, their own nutritionists. It's very sports specific. If I'm working with a golfer and their physical activity based on their nutrition and their flexibility, it's going to be different than over here with my power lifter who needs to eat 7,000 calories a day. So that sports specificity is what a bowler, they can still be experts and lose their relationships because they bowl. Nobody is immune to that.
So you just mentioned all the fast food and how easy it is for us to go to the gas station and get a lousy burrito or a hot dog. It's very hard for many of us to follow the right diet. As you mentioned, we're busy. We could be lazy or undisciplined about eating the right thing every day. How do we get into that right routine and stay there when it comes to nutrition?
We always called it Sunday, plan for the week, food prep. Food prep became a big term probably 10 years ago. I think that having it prepared is the only way. When I talk about moderation, I say to people, don't bring home what you would eat at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. when the kids go to bed and you're tired. Don't bring that home. And if you do, bring it home in one serving. We have portion distortion in America. We think the more is the better, and the average guy eats 3 or 4 cups of spaghetti in a sitting versus the 1 cup that's on the back of the nutrients label calorically. I mean, even a Monster drink is 3 servings. So we're not reading the labels. So I would say that preparation makes the most sense. getting ready for when you're tired, looking at the back of labels and getting rid of ingredients you can't say that have 3 syllables or more. Just you can get rid of 500 calories a day just reducing some condiments. So start simple. You don't have to eat kale. I say that every day. You don't have to do squats. Walking has been proven over a period of time. If you walk every day for 30 minutes for the rest of your life, you would be healthier than hanging and banging in the gym for that 10 years when you were in your 20s. So if walking works and reducing some of the yucky things work, then let's start there. But without an accountability team too, that's tough because we do lie to ourselves. We absolutely make those excuses. So I'd say start simple. I keep all of my veggies, everything cut up in glass containers, but I didn't get here overnight. It takes a while to get that prepared.
So we've talked about a lot of the different things of being well, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, all that. How can people manage stress in their daily lives?
I just did a video on that. It's so funny. I actually have a grid. Where did I put it? So to me, there's 3 types of stress. There's acute, there's chronic, and there's burnout. Some of them are, and they could be acute. We need stress. So stress in the sense of like you're planning for a beautiful wedding is stressful, and your body's going to react the same if it's a beautiful wedding or you're going through a foreclosure. Blood pressure's up, not sleeping, tense, mindset, nobody wants to be around you. And they're 2 very different events, but the body reacts the same. Chronic stress acts for a longer period of time. So it could be 6 months of a chronic stress. And then burnout often hits the 1-year mark. And you can relate that to disease states. Diabetes kicks in, overweight kicks in, all of those sleep apnea kicks in. So in regards to stress, whatever phase that you're in, and what is stress to someone? For me, when I lose my sleep, my stress equates to sleep. Is it stress for overeating? Stress for undereating? Stress for not calling your mom. Some people are recluses and just go into their bedroom and, watch baking shows for their stress. But I think the most important in my grid, what I was saying in my video is what is the stress? What happened? Blood pressure, what happened? And then what caused it next? Did mom upset you, a negative person? And then what would you do differently next time? And it's the what would you do differently next time that needs to be focused on.
A lot of folks are traveling this time of year. It's obviously middle of the summer. How do we eat right, exercise enough, and sleep well when our schedules are being disrupted by travel?
Planes, trains, and automobiles. Another video, Chris. Thank you. Planes, trains, and automobiles. So when I prep people for their travels, it's very different on what you can bring for your airplane versus what you can bring in your car. Obviously, if you have a cooler, you can have your cut up veggies and fruits and get away with it, your yogurts, all that stuff. But it's also important to bring along the things that work in a physical sense. You can bring your rubber bands, you can bring your walking shoes. If you've got to look at the type of vacation. If I'm going to the beach and it's 95 degrees, my physical activity might not look the exact same as if I went to see you in Connecticut. So plane, what's happening, trains and automobiles. When you get on your vacations, there's a theory that people are all or nothing. Well, I'm on vacation, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to drink what I want, eat what I want. They're going to do everything that they want. But then you have to come home and clean it up. So I say, make sure that 2 or 3 days before, I'm not saying to amp into it and start drinking. I'm not saying that. But that all or nothing is going to come home and take about 2 weeks. So if you have 1 week vacation and 2 weeks to try to get back on track, maybe walk the stairs in a cruise ship. When I went on a cruise, we never took the elevator. So how can you be creative to eat at the, to drink at the bar and still get physically active?
Peggy Willms, author of The Fourfold Formula for All Things Wellness, Win the Wellness War, Wellness GPS, Get Prepared for Success with All Things Wellness, and Unsheltered, coming out soon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure and a joy, and I really hope you'll come back another time.
Yes. Give me a call. Have your people call my people.
We're each other's people, right?
Yeah, we are.
I'll call.
Call me.
And thanks to our audience, which now includes people in over 50 countries, for joining us for another episode of Next Steps Forward. I'm Chris Meek. For more details on upcoming shows and guests, please follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Chris Meek Public Figure and on X at Chris Meek_USA. I don't have TikTok, sorry. We'll be back next Tuesday, same time, same place, with another leader from the world of business, politics, public policy, sports, or entertainment. Until then, stay safe and keep taking your next steps forward.